This race car is the second day of the Salisbury meeting on the 7th of July 1920. I've actually got on the 8th of July for Salisbury as well for the third day, and I put that up tomorrow. I'll have to go for that one. This race car's not on the brilliantest condition. Basically it's 100 years old. So just quickly go into what you can see on the race card. What I'll do with all of these is, because it's almost basically impossible to do this while holding a camera in a video, I'll just photograph the pages as I'll do the previous two videos, and I'll just talk about them there. Yeah, that's just how I also know in the video. Very hard racing with big stakes, amateur race. I'm quite aware there's 7th race for this time of racing. You know, nowadays it's quite commonly says 7th race more than not. It's actually it's exception really this actually for this period for a long time, possibly I think possibly into the 80s, 90s even. Really, almost always seems to be six race cars. It's quite rare to see a 7 race car here. And a strange looking maiden, and I've seen the video of it actually. It's a maiden with the winner had 2 weeks before, and I was playing that in the video. April Princess has the same name as a dam, and actually it's a mistake, and in fact it should be April Girl in this race card. Nightwade had a poor debut at Sandown on Esher Cup Day, third in a sell at Wolverhampton in May, unplaced at Newbury in June, third in this race at Salisbury, unplaced in Manchester in September, and fourth in a Warwick seller in November, and he didn't run in Britain after that. And once was well known when he went to Australia and came out absolutely brilliant sire, and I'll include a Wikipedia link about the horse Nightwade to show how good he was. Dickon won this race. He was owned and trained by R. Farquharson and ridden by Albert Whaley, whose nickname was Snowy. And early in his career, Snowy Whaley had been India's champion jockey for 8 years in a row when he went over there. He also rode the winner of the 1919 2000 Guineas and the 1920 Oaks. Westminster Gazette described the weather conditions at Salisbury as the sky being veiled by angry-looking clouds. Dickon won by 6 lengths at 6-4 on favourite. The Leicester Post afterwards stated he was only named Dickon before this race. The same article writes that he wrote in a canter amongst cries of "Stop him!" The article claims he was sold for 420 guineas to jockey Fred Templeman, who had won the Derby the year before, and also he was sold to Scott Murray for the same price. It's pretty clear from another article that Templeman was acting on behalf of Murray. This may be Major Austin Scott Murray, who married into the Walpole family. The special correspondent of the Western Mail did not hold back in attacking the racecourse, stating, "Racing at Salisbury today was carried on under miserable conditions, and to make matters worse, the executive, whoever they are, do not appear to care a tinker's curse for convenience or the comfort of the public. This is a case in which the stewards of a jockey club should alert themselves and insist that unless guarantees are given that Salisbury races shall cease to be the disgrace they are now, no dates for holding meetings on the course will be granted for 1922. This gives the executive, whoever it is, 18 months to put that house in order." The special correspondent rating was of poor class, and they spoke to Mr. Farquharson after Dixon had won the opener. "I'm surprised you let that youngster go." He replied, "I never put a horse in a selling race unless I want to get rid of him. I'm not one of those who use selling plates to gamble on. I dislike them. If people want to buy my horses after they have won a selling plate, it is their business. I do not oppose them." It's a fair point at not being clear who really runs the racecourse. The front page of the race card doesn't give us a lot of information as to who they are. And the racecourse for many decades, really, until say about 1980 or even. The tent of the front page had the people running racecourse on there. Nowadays you find it on the inside page, but certainly with a lack of information about who they are. So go back to Dickon. The horse ran 8 times in that season. His debut was at Salisbury May the 20th. They simply called a gelding, with the Dam of Wormangal. And of course, you are saying he was renamed before this race here. Now, the current rules, and I think earlier on as well, but even maybe back to this time, you cannot rename a British racehorse after it's ran. Now, what rules are is if then our horse has not got a name, that might be different. He certainly couldn't run a horse now without a name, that wouldn't be possible. So it must have been then, and then pick up a name later on. He then finished third at Birmingham in August, and his 5 other efforts were unplaced, and he never won in future years. Solitaire won this race. He was owned by Bob Mills and trained by Sentence, which is all the papers say. The only licensed trainer at that time with his surname or Sentence was George Sentence, so I assume it's him. It was ridden by Walter Earl, who won all the 5 classics during his career, and as a trainer won the 1945 Flat Trainers Championship. Solitaire won 8 times in 1920, but this win was the only time he was placed. He made his debut on April the 5th at Kempton. In 1921, Solitaire won 4 times on the flat without being placed, and he's now owned by Mrs. Mills rather than Bob Mills. 1922, he was now owned and trained by H. Young. He won twice over hurdles in 1922 and then 4 times later on in the flat that year, but was placed in none of them. I'll just note that Coeur de Lion is a nickname of King Richard I. Trimola won a 3-year-old maiden at Kempton on June the 9th before 13 days later finishing second in the Irish Derby at the Cup. The third race was won by His Highness, owned by Bob Jeffrey and trained by Etienne George de Mestre, son of Australian jockey, breeder and trainer Etienne Livingston de Mestre. It was ridden by Vic Smythe. I assume that's how you pronounce the surname. It's Smyth. It could be pronounced Smith or Smythe. Who won the 1923 Oaks and as a trainer won the 1952 1,000 Guineas and the champion hurdle 4 times. The Nottingham Evening Post, who wrote His Highness won cleverly in this race at Salisbury, he was second 2 days later at Lingfield. His Highness made his debut in 1919 at the Newmarket Rolling Mile course, when owned and trained by Sam Pickering. He won the flat at Aintree in November 1919 when Aintree had a flat course in a selling plate, giving Bernard Carslake his 100th winner of the season as a jockey, and was bought by Bob Jeffrey then for 360 guineas. In 1920, His Highness won 4 other times, his only place performance being that second at Lingfield 2 days after Salisbury. He didn't run after 1920. The 4th race was won by Challow, owned by Washington Singer, who owned the winners of the 1905 St Leger and the 1932 2,000 Guineas, and the Washington Singer Stakes at Newbury is named after him. He was trained by Alex Taylor Jr., also known as the Wizard of Manton, who trained 21 British Classic winners, including each race at least once, and was champion flat trainer 12 times. He was ridden by John Joseph Brennan, was known as Jack Brennan, who won the 1921 2,000 Guineas. Challow may not have ran as a 2-year-old in 1918, with the lack of racing during the First World War, and in 1919 he won at Salisbury in May, but the Scotsman felt the wider a second horse could have been better, and Challow also won in Salisbury in July and Windsor in September. In 1920, Challow won 9 other times apart from this race at Salisbury. He also won at the Old Hurst Park Racecourse in July. He was third at Doncaster at September's St Leger meeting, second at Aintree on the flat in November, and second winning again at Hurst Park later the same month. In 1921, he was hugely busy, winning 8 times on the flat and 10 times over the jumps. On the flat, he won at Hurst Park in August, but was unplaced in his other 7 runs. Over the jumps, he was second at Wolverhampton in March, third at the Old Newport Racecourse in May, and second at Exeter, those days called Devon and Exeter, until actually the early 90s, and that was in September. In 1922, he won 4 times on the flat and twice over hurdles. On the flat, he finished second at Hurst Park in August, and over jumps, he won at the Old Birmingham Racecourse earlier in the year in January. 1923, he won 3 times on the flat and 5 over the jumps. On the flat, he finished third at Hurst Park in August. Over jumps, he finished second in a selling Chimon hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival. Yes, I used to be selling hurdles at the Cheltenham Festival. The race card is seen with an interview with Sir Peter O'Sullivan, either the late 80s or early 90s, not sure if it's a Cheltenham Festival or not, and was asked what race he wanted to bring in, and he actually said a selling hurdle or chase, as you could imagine, the betting for it. Challow went on to be third at the Old Pershore Racecourse in May, and won at Uttoxeter later the same month, And in 1926 she was back in a selling hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival, this time over 3 miles. Coriolanus is the name of a Shakespeare play, and one of the more obscure plays, but there's been a very recent top quality adaptation of Tom Hiddleston in the title role. Arabesque won the 5th race, owned by Lord Rosebery, who won the winners of 1894, 1895 and 1905 Epsom Derbies. First two owned by him at the same time as he was Prime Minister, a role he had between March 4th, 1894 and the 22nd of June in 1895, and frankly, he was much less successful in the role of Prime Minister. More comments put up a link to a liberal history biography of him. Arabesque was trained by Frank Hartington. In 1933, trained the horse that Gordon Richards rode when he broke Fred Archer's record of 246 winners in a season. He also trained the winner of the 1930 Grand National. Arabesque was ridden by the Australian-born Frank Bullock, who had many successes in Australia and Britain, as well as winning the first ever Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe in 1920, and he won the 1,000 guineas in 1925. She won 6 times in 1920, making her debut at the Old Lewis Racecourse on June the 8th, finishing unplaced. She then won at Brighton later in June, with Fortunatus writing the Sheffield Daily Telegraph that she was beautifully bred. After the Salisbury race, the Leicester Daily Post wrote Arabesque is beautifully bred by Tracy out of Valve and owned by Lord Rosebery. It is a pleasure to see his lordship own such a beautiful filly. At Brighton she did not beat much, but won easily, and now the old-time Hurstbourne Stakes, she beat the most expected Scorpius with ridiculous ease. She was 4th at Sandown in August, and 3rd at the Old Manchester Racecourse in September. White Knight of Leeds Mercury fancied her to do well at the Old Derby Racecourse in November, but she was unplaced. She won 5 times in 1921 with a couple of placed efforts. She was second at Hurst Park in May. Later in the month she was unplaced in the Egmont Plate at Epsom, where Wapier, writing later in the Illustrated Sporting and Dramatic News on June the 11th, described her as the disappointment of the race, saying one expects to find Lord Rosebery's horses winning at Epsom. In September, she finished second at the former Alexandra Park Racecourse, and that was her final career run. I'll note the horse named Ulysses, partly as reused later on, including by Ulysses, who won the 2017 Eclipse at Sandown and the International Stakes at York. It's a name from classical literature. Odysseus is what the Greek version, and the later Roman version is Ulysses. And Odysseus is seen as a more positive character, as more cunning, while the Romans were less keen on that, and actually Virgil's character is more seen rather as misleading. There's also James Joyce's book Ulysses, and that started coming up in 1918 as a serial originally. So I would say chance the horse might be named after that, given when the horse was made its debut. I think it's more likely though it's a classical connection rather than through James Joyce. Scorpius went on to win good races in Western Australia. Brandy Snap, the pedigreequery.com website is a very useful source of information. The disadvantage of it is like Wikipedia, anyone can edit it, and so therefore it can not necessarily be accurate. And interestingly, the original entry for Brandy Snap said they didn't know the horse existed, because whoever had written that entry couldn't find any evidence that this horse actually existed. Well, I've edited that myself, and I put the pedigree query link myself up there, point out that yes, it does exist. There's a race card with a horse in it. And race 6 that Ardevon is actually in 2 races. I'm saying in other videos, this is before overnight declarances, which was March 1961, I think. And so you can sometimes see horses in 2 races. And later, I was saying race 7 at Mackerson is also in 2 races. The 6th race is the Bibury Stakes handicap. It could be a Bibury Stakes handicap as well. I looked up online, and both are right and both are wrong pronunciations, apparently. They'll call it the Bibury. There's a huge rate for flat race, and the club in the race details means a Bibury Club, which is the world's oldest horse racing club, formed in 1681, and is the name of the current organisation, that's 2020, who won Salisbury Racecourse. And the race was originally a 2-mile race, ran at the Old Bibury Racecourse, which closed in 1848. Tom's last won this race. She was owned by James Kemp, trained by F. Brown and ridden by Mr. S. Lloyd. in a race in which all the riders were amateurs. She made her debut during 1919 as a 4-year-old horse when owned by Mr. G. Wennick and trained by W. Wennick. As I said earlier, World War One, I could tell the most racing over the war period, and so was lack of racing when she was a younger horse, so was less opportunities. Now, a week after an unplaced effort at Catterick, she won a 2-runner affair at Pontefract by 20 lengths, making all the running in what the Staffordshire Senator described as a canter. She won at York later in May. The first half of 1920, she'd been owned by Mr. F. Pedley and trained by Mr. Payne. The possibility for a Birmingham race over hurdles on both January 12th and January 13th, but ran in neither. Later in the month, the possibility of a newbie handicap chase, but again was a non-runner. Her only jumps race that year was an unplaced effort in a hurdle at Cheltenham in November. She won many times on the flat in 1920 with 12 runs, including 2 further wins apart from the Salisbury win. She finished second at Kempton in May and won in Bath at Salisbury later the same month. On July 1st, she finished third on the flat course that Worcester used to have, and then on July 6th finished second at Salisbury before the next day winning this race at Salisbury. And in August, she finished third at Lewes and also third at Wolverhampton. In 1921, she had 6 flat races and 3 jumps races, was placed in none. And in 1922, she had a huge amount of runs with 9 on the flat and 13 over jumps. In May, she won at Bath, which is her only win that year of any type, flat or jumps. She finished second at Bath, winning again there in August. Over the jumps, she finished third in April in what is called in that year's Rough's Guide to the Turf at Herefordshire Hunt Racecourse. Now, this may be another name for Hereford, but unhelpfully in the list of racecourses of that season, Rough's Guide doesn't list anything for Hereford or Herefordshire, so it may be Hereford, it may not be. Only other place effort was second of 3 runners at the Glamorgan Racecourse, and she won twice from a flat in 1923 without being placed. Equinox won this race, owned by the wife of Major Harold Kaiser. Major Kaiser bought the horse in July the 1st, 1919 for 2,600 guineas, and the horse ran his wife's name then, finishing second, and she won other times that season without winning. Major Kaiser himself was a member of a well-known shipping company, and he was trained by Gooch. Given the only licensed trainer of that surname was Richard Gooch, I'll assume it's him. Richard Gooch had ridden a horse he owned called Clotoy to victory in both the Sinai and Palestine Grand Nationals while serving as a captain in the Middle East during World War One, and that horse has been described as the best and most famous charger in the Egyptian Expeditionary Force, having once survived being hit by 3 bullets. And Richard Gooch went on to train the winners of a Goodwood Cup in 1928 and 1929, and his original base after World War One is now used by very well-known trainer and former top-quality footballer Mick Shannon. And this horse is another winning ride for Snowy Whaley, who won earlier on the card. Equinox ran 7 times for flat in 1920. She won at Salisbury in May and the Old Gatwick Racecourse in June before winning this maiden race. And that sounds slightly odd. How can a horse win a maiden race when they've won twice before? We look, the rules state, though, that a horse only has to be maiden at entry, and the entry is closed at a bizarrely early date of December the 2nd, 1919 for this Salisbury race. She also finished second at Glorious Goodwood in July.